I'm Sarah, 26 years old. My father chose my half-sister's birthday party over walking me down the aisle at my wedding. She scheduled it the exact same day, same time. I didn't scream. I didn't break down. I smiled and told him I understood. But what he didn't know was that I already had someone else in mind to take his place. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt completely abandoned by a parent who was supposed to love you unconditionally. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. Let me explain how we got here, because this betrayal was 26 years in the making. When I was 8 years old, my father had an affair with his secretary. The affair destroyed our family and left my mother heartbroken and divorced. Dad married his secretary Carol within 6 months. They had Melissa 2 years later. The divorce was brutal. My mother was devastated, but she had help. My grandfather, who was a successful attorney, represented her and made sure she got everything she deserved. Dad never forgave him for that. After the divorce, I went to live with my grandfather. Not because my mother couldn't take care of me, but because Dad was too busy building his new perfect family to deal with his old one. From day one, it was clear that Melissa was the chosen daughter. Christmas mornings at Dad's house were like watching someone else's family celebrate. Melissa got piles of expensive gifts while I got one practical present. Her birthday parties were elaborate affairs with themes and decorations. Mine were dinner at a restaurant if I was lucky. When she wanted something, Dad moved heaven and earth to get it for her. When I needed something, I learned to ask my grandfather instead. The pattern was obvious to everyone except Dad, who genuinely seemed to believe he was being fair. But the real problem with Melissa wasn't just that she was favored. It was that she enjoyed it. She liked knowing she came first. She liked watching me get less. She liked being Daddy's special girl while I was just the reminder of his past mistakes. And her mother, Carol, encouraged every bit of it. Carol never liked me. To her, I was proof that her husband had a whole life before her. She treated me with polite coldness whenever I visited, making it clear I was an unwelcome guest in their perfect home. She raised Melissa to see me as competition rather than family. So when James and I got engaged last Christmas, I should have expected what came next. James had been my boyfriend for 3 years. He was kind, funny, successful, and completely devoted to me. Everything I'd ever wanted in a partner. He was also the boy who had rejected Melissa when we were teenagers. I'll never forget that summer when Melissa was 14 and I was 16. She developed this intense crush on James, following us around whenever he came over, trying to insert herself into our conversations. One day at a family barbecue, she cornered him by the pool and asked if he wanted to go out with her instead of me. James was gentle but firm. He told her he wasn't interested, that he only saw her as his girlfriend's little sister. I watched her face crumple with humiliation and rage. She ran into the house crying, and I knew she would never forgive either of us for that moment. When James proposed to me in front of the whole family at Christmas dinner, Melissa's smile looked like it was carved from ice. "Congratulations," she said sweetly. "I hope your wedding is everything you've ever dreamed of." I should have known she was already planning to make sure it wasn't. We set the date for May 18th, sent out save the dates to family in January. Everyone promised to be there, including Dad. For 4 months, everything went perfectly. James and I found the perfect venue, the perfect dress, the perfect flowers. We were planning the wedding of our dreams. Then, 6 weeks before the big day, Melissa made her announcement. She was throwing herself a 24th birthday party, a huge celebration with all her friends, a milestone birthday that absolutely had to be celebrated properly. On May 18th. When I pointed out that was my wedding day, she just shrugged. "Oh, what a coincidence. But you understand, right? I can't change my birthday." Coincidence. Right. This was the same girl who had somehow managed to have emergencies during every important event of my life. The same girl who always needed Dad's attention most when I needed it too. But this time felt different. This time felt like war, because I knew exactly why she was doing it. She wanted to prove, once and for all, that she mattered more to Dad than I did. She wanted to force him to choose between us on the most important day of my life. And she was confident she knew who he'd pick. The 6 weeks between Melissa's announcement and my wedding were psychological warfare. She posted constantly on social media about her milestone birthday celebration. She talked about how excited she was, how it was going to be the party of the year, how she couldn't wait to celebrate with all the people who really matter. The message was clear. If you really mattered to her, you'd choose her party over my wedding. Dad started making comments about how important this birthday was to Melissa, how she'd been looking forward to it for months, how it was such a shame about the scheduling conflict. Scheduling conflict. like my wedding date was some random appointment that could be moved around to accommodate Melissa's party. When family members called to ask about the situation, I stayed calm and polite. Melissa scheduled her party for my wedding day. I'd say simply, people will have to choose which event matters more to them. Most of our relatives were horrified. They told Melissa politely but firmly that they'd already committed to my wedding. They'd made travel arrangements, bought gifts, taken time off work. But Dad didn't say anything. 3 weeks before the wedding, I confronted him directly. Dad, are you coming to my wedding? Of course I'm coming to your wedding, Sarah. Don't be ridiculous. And Melissa's party? He got uncomfortable. Well, I'll probably stop by there too. You know how important this is to her. Dad, her party starts at the same time as my ceremony. You can't be at both. I'm sure we can work something out. There's nothing to work out. You have to choose. Sarah, please don't make this harder than it has to be. I'm not making anything hard. I'm asking my father to prioritize his daughter's wedding over a birthday party. It's not that simple. Actually, Dad, it is exactly that simple. But I could see in his eyes that he'd already made his choice. He just didn't have the courage to tell me. 2 weeks before the wedding, I stopped by Dad's house to drop off his boutonniere and finalize details. Melissa was there, surrounded by party planning materials. Decorations, guest lists, menu cards. Sarah, she said brightly, how's the wedding planning going? Fine, thanks. I'm so excited about my party. It's going to be amazing. Dad's been helping me plan everything. I looked at Dad, who couldn't meet my eyes. That's nice, I said evenly. You know, it's such a shame about the date conflict, Melissa continued. I really wish there was a way for everyone to celebrate both events. There is, I said. You could reschedule your party. Oh, but the venue is already booked, and all my friends have made plans. It would be impossible to change now. How thoughtful of you to consider that. She smiled that ice-cold smile again. I'm sure everything will work out perfectly for both of us. 1 week before the wedding, Dad finally called me. Sarah, we need to talk. About what? About the situation with Melissa's party. What about it? Well, you know how much this means to her. She's been planning it for months, and she's so excited. I've been planning my wedding for over a year. Yes, but this is different. This is her first real adult birthday celebration. And this is my only wedding. Sarah, I need you to understand. Melissa really needs me there. She's counting on me. And I'm not counting on you? Silence. Dad, let me make this simple for you. If you go to Melissa's party instead of my wedding, you will never walk me down any aisle, ever. Don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being clear. Choose carefully. Sarah, choose. Dad, your daughter's wedding or your daughter's birthday party, but understand that this choice will define our relationship forever. I hung up before he could respond, but I wasn't devastated. I wasn't even surprised, because I'd spent 18 years living with my grandfather, and I'd learned something important about family. Real family shows up when it matters. Real family chooses you when it's hard. Real family doesn't make you compete for love. And if my biological father couldn't understand that, well, I had another father figure who'd proven his love every day for 18 years. The man who had raised me when Dad couldn't be bothered. The man who had never missed a single important moment in my life. The man who deserved the honor of walking me down the aisle more than anyone else in the world. I just hadn't told him yet. The week of my wedding, I still hadn't heard from Dad. No phone calls, no texts, no attempt to explain his choice or ask for forgiveness. He'd made his decision, and now he was avoiding the consequences. Meanwhile, Melissa was in full celebration mode. She posted photos of her dress, her decorations, her party preparations. She was documenting every detail of her triumph. She'd won. She'd forced Dad to choose, and he'd chosen her. But what she didn't understand was that her victory was about to become her biggest mistake. Because while she'd been focused on taking something away from me, I'd been focused on finding something better. 3 days before the wedding, I visited my grandfather. He was in his garden, tending to the roses he'd been growing for 30 years. The same garden where he'd taught me about patience and nurturing and the difference between things that grow wild and things that need careful attention. How are you feeling about Saturday? He asked without looking up from his pruning. Excited, I said honestly. Ready. And your father? What about him? Has he called? No, and he won't. Grandpa Joe straightened up and looked at me with those wise eyes that had seen me through every crisis of my life. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Don't be, I'm not. No? Grandpa, I need to ask you something important. Anything. Will you walk me down the aisle? His eyes filled with tears immediately. Sarah, you're the man who raised me. You're the man who taught me what love looks like. You're the man who showed up for every important moment when he couldn't be bothered. It would be the greatest honor of my life. Good. Because you're the only person I want giving me away. We hugged in that garden surrounded by the roses he'd spent decades nurturing, and I felt a peace I'd never experienced before. This wasn't plan B. This wasn't settling for second choice. This was choosing the right person for the right reasons. The morning of my wedding dawned bright and perfect. I woke up in my childhood bedroom at Grandpa Joe's house, surrounded by the memories of the man who had actually raised me. My bridesmaids arrived early to help with hair and makeup. They kept asking nervous questions about my father, but I deflected with calm confidence. Everything is exactly as it should be, I told them. At noon, my phone buzzed with notifications from social media. Melissa's party had begun. She was posting photos of herself in an elaborate gold dress, surrounded by decorations, posing with Dad. She looked triumphant. In one photo, Dad was giving a toast. The caption read, "My dad calling me his greatest joy on my special day. His greatest joy." I felt something settle in my chest, but it wasn't heartbreak. It was clarity, because seeing those photos confirmed what I'd always known but never wanted to admit. I had never been his greatest joy. I had never been his priority. I had never been his chosen daughter, but I had been someone else's greatest joy for 18 years, and that someone else was about to walk me down the aisle. At 2 o'clock, guests started arriving at the church. I watched from the bridal suite window as cars pulled up. Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda, my cousins, James's family, friends from college and work. Everyone who had promised to be there was keeping their promise. Everyone except the one person who should have mattered most. But I wasn't sad anymore. I was anticipating. Because in 1 hour, everyone in that church was going to witness something extraordinary. They were going to see what real love looked like. They were going to see what loyalty looked like. They were going to see what it meant to be chosen by the right person. And somewhere across town, at a birthday party that was about to lose its shine, my father was going to start getting some very uncomfortable questions. At 2:30, family members started calling. "Sarah, where's your father? People are asking." "He's not coming," I said simply. "What do you mean he's not coming?" He chose to attend Melissa's birthday party instead. The silence on the other end of the phone spoke volumes. "Are you okay?" "I'm perfect. Better than perfect." "But who's going to walk you down the aisle?" "You'll see." I had the same conversation 4 times. Each person went from shock to outrage to concern for me, but I felt nothing but excitement, because I knew that in 30 minutes I was going to surprise everyone in the most beautiful way possible. At 2:45, my phone rang one last time. Dad's number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Sarah, I need to explain. Are you at my wedding, Dad?" "No, but..." "Then there's nothing to explain. People here are asking me why I'm not at your wedding. They're saying terrible things. Maybe because what you're doing is terrible." "Sarah? Please, can I still come? I can leave the party now." "To do what? Show up for pictures after missing the ceremony?" "You thought maybe you could have it both ways. Support Melissa when it mattered to her and still get credit for being at my wedding." That's exactly what you thought. But you can't have both, Dad. You made your choice. I made a mistake. You made a choice. The same choice you've been making my entire life. Sarah. Goodbye, Dad. Enjoy the party. I hung up and turned off my phone. At 2:55, the music started. My bridesmaids lined up outside the sanctuary doors. They were all crying with happiness because they understood what was about to happen. They knew who was waiting for me at the back of that church. They knew who had earned the right to give me away. I took my place behind the closed doors and felt my heart pound with anticipation. Not nervousness. Not sadness. Pure, joyful anticipation. Because I was about to walk down that aisle with the man who had never once let me down. The man who had taught me that love is spelled T-I-M-E. The man who had shown me what it meant to be someone's priority. Have you ever had a moment when you realized that the person you needed was right there all along? When you stopped waiting for someone to choose you and started appreciating someone who already had? Drop a comment and let me know, because what happened next was pure magic. The sanctuary doors opened and I stepped into view. But I wasn't alone. Walking beside me, his arm steady and strong under mine, was my grandfather in his finest suit, distinguished, proud, and beaming with the kind of love that can't be faked. The gasp that went through the church was audible. Every single person turned to look, expecting to see my father behind us, expecting this to be some kind of procession where Dad would appear at any moment. But the space behind us was empty, and the message was clear. As we walked down that aisle, every step deliberate and meaningful, I could see the realization dawning on faces throughout the church. Uncle Mark's mouth fell open. Aunt Linda started crying immediately. My cousins looked around in confusion, still expecting Dad to materialize. But James, my beautiful James, understood immediately. His face broke into the most radiant smile I'd ever seen, and I saw pride and love and respect shining in his eyes. He knew who was walking me down that aisle. He knew who deserved that honor. He knew that this moment was about more than just a wedding ceremony. When we reached the altar, Grandpa Joe stopped and turned to face the congregation. In a voice strong and clear enough for everyone to hear, he spoke words that would echo in that church forever. "Who gives this woman to be married to this man?" Pastor Williams, recovering from his own surprise, prompted the traditional response. "I do," Grandpa Joe said firmly. "I have had the privilege and joy of raising Sarah from a young girl into the remarkable woman she is today. Today, I am honored to place her hand in the hand of a man who will love her the way she has always deserved to be loved." The church was dead silent except for the sound of people crying. He placed my hand in James's, kissed my forehead gently, and whispered, "I'm so proud of you." Then he took his place in the front row, where the father of the bride should sit, where he had always belonged. James squeezed my hand and whispered, "That was perfect." Pastor Williams, clearly moved by what he'd just witnessed, began the ceremony. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to celebrate the union of Sarah and James, surrounded by the people who truly love and support them." The emphasis on truly was not lost on anyone. As the ceremony continued, I felt a peace and rightness I'd never experienced before. This was how it was supposed to be. This was what it looked like when you were surrounded by people who chose you. This was what it felt like to be loved by the right people for the right reasons. When it came time for vows, James looked directly into my eyes and said something that made my grandfather beam with pride. "Sarah, you have taught me that family is not just about blood, but about the people who show up consistently with love and support. Today, surrounded by people who truly value us, I promise to always choose you, to always prioritize you, to never make you question where you stand in my life." When Pastor Williams pronounced us husband and wife, the kiss we shared tasted like freedom and new beginnings. As we walked back down the aisle as a married couple, I caught sight of faces in the congregation. Everyone was crying. Everyone was smiling. Everyone understood that they had witnessed something extraordinary. They had seen a daughter finally be valued by the right person. They had seen what real love and loyalty looked like, and they knew that this moment was going to have consequences that reached far beyond our wedding day. Outside the church, people surrounded us with congratulations and praise. "Sarah, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," Aunt Linda said through her tears. "Your grandfather was absolutely perfect," Uncle Mark added. "That's exactly how it should have been." But the most meaningful comment came from James's grandmother, who had been married for 60 years. "Young lady," she said, taking my hands in hers, "you just showed everyone in that church what it means to honor the people who honor you. That was wisdom beyond your years." As we posed for photos with my grandfather, my phone started buzzing with messages. But they weren't from Dad. They were from people at Melissa's party. The messages coming in during our photo session painted a picture I wished I could see with my own eyes. "Sarah, people here are asking your dad where he is. He looks really uncomfortable. Everyone at this party knows about your wedding. They're all talking about how they can't believe he's here instead. Melissa is getting upset because people keep asking about you instead of celebrating her. Your dad just stepped outside to take a phone call. He looks sick." I showed the messages to James, who was trying not to laugh during our formal photos. "Karma works fast," he whispered. "It sure does." The reception was everything we'd dreamed it would be. My grandfather's speech was the highlight of the evening. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the room, "I want to tell you about the greatest privilege of my life." The room fell silent. 26 years ago, a little 8-year-old girl came to live with me. She was heartbroken and confused, wondering why her world had fallen apart. I could see people wiping their eyes already. But that little girl taught me something about resilience, about strength, about the difference between giving up and growing up. He looked directly at me. "Sarah, you have become everything I hoped you would be, and more. You are kind without being naive, strong without being bitter. And you have learned the most important lesson of all, that you deserve to be chosen first." The applause was thunderous. "James, you are receiving a woman who knows her own worth. Treasure that. Protect that. Because women like Sarah don't come along often." After dinner, as people danced and celebrated, my phone rang. Dad's number. James nodded encouragingly. "Take it." "Hello?" Sarah? Dad's voice was strained and desperate. I need to talk to you. I'm at my wedding reception, Dad. You know, the wedding you missed. About that, I heard that your grandfather walked you down the aisle. That's correct. How could you do that to me? I felt something cold settle in my chest. How could I do what to you? You brought him to your wedding. You let him take my place. Do you have any idea how humiliated I am right now? You're humiliated? Everyone here is asking me why I'm not at my daughter's wedding. They're looking at me like I'm some kind of monster. Maybe because your behavior is monstrous. Sarah, you don't understand what you've done. You brought the man who destroyed my life to take my place at your wedding. The man who destroyed your life? Or the man who made sure you faced consequences for destroying ours? He turned everyone against me after the divorce. He made sure my mother got what she deserved after you cheated on her. That's not the point. That's exactly the point. You're not upset that you missed my wedding, Dad. You're upset that people are judging you for missing my wedding. I need you to fix this. Can you tell people there was a misunderstanding? And there it was. He wasn't calling to apologize. He was calling to ask me to manage the consequences of his choices. No. What do you mean, no? I mean, no, I will not lie to protect you from the results of your own decisions. But Melissa's party is ruined. Everyone here is talking about your wedding instead of celebrating her. That's interesting, because my wedding is perfect. Sarah, please. Dad, I need to go. My husband and I have a reception to enjoy. You know, our wedding reception. The one you missed. I hung up before he could respond. 2 hours later, he showed up at the reception. Dad appeared at the entrance to our reception hall looking desperate and disheveled. He was still wearing his party clothes from Melissa's celebration, but his hair was messy and his tie was crooked. He looked like a man who had just realized he'd made the worst mistake of his life. Uncle Mark approached him immediately. Robert, what are you doing here? I need to talk to Sarah. You missed her wedding. I know, I made a mistake. I need to fix this. Word spread quickly through the reception that Dad had arrived. Conversations stopped. People turned to stare. James squeezed my hand. What do you want to do? I looked across the room at this man who had chosen a birthday party over his daughter's wedding, and I felt nothing but clarity. Let him come over. It's time to finish this. Dad approached our table where James and I were sitting with my grandfather. He looked terrible up close. His eyes were red-rimmed and he was shaking slightly. Sarah, I need to explain. You have 5 minutes, I said calmly. Say what you need to say. He looked around at the people who had gathered to watch this confrontation. Can we talk privately? No, you made your choice publicly. You can face the consequences publicly. Sarah, please. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. He took a shaky breath. I made the biggest mistake of my life today. I should have been at your wedding. I should have walked you down that aisle. But you didn't. I thought I could make everyone happy. I thought I could go to Melissa's party and still be part of your day somehow. By showing up after missing the ceremony? I didn't think it through. I just knew Melissa needed me. And I didn't need you? Of course you needed me. You're my daughter. Am I? Because daughters are prioritized by their fathers. Daughters are chosen when it matters. Daughters don't have to compete for their father's attention. I never meant to make you compete, but you did. For 26 years, you made me compete with Melissa for scraps of your attention. And today, on my wedding day, you made me compete one last time. I'm sorry. Are you sorry you missed my wedding? Or are you sorry that people are judging you for missing my wedding? He couldn't answer. Dad, do you know what the worst part of today was? That I wasn't there? No. The worst part was that I wasn't even surprised. Because this is exactly who you've always been. Sarah, but do you know what the best part was? He shook his head. The best part was having the right man walk me down that aisle. The man who raised me. The man who never once put me second. The man who actually deserves the title of father. I gestured toward my grandfather, who was watching with quiet dignity. That man earned the right to give me away through 18 years of consistent love and support. You lost that right through 18 years of consistent neglect. I love you, Sarah. Love is not a feeling, Dad. Love is a choice. And your choices have spoken louder than your words ever could. The entire room was dead silent. So what happens now? He asked quietly. Now you live with your choices. You chose Melissa over me today, and that choice has consequences. What kind of consequences? The kind where you don't get to be part of my life anymore. You're cutting me out? I'm choosing to build my life around people who choose me back. But I'm your father. No, I said firmly. You're the man who contributed DNA. He's my father. I pointed to my grandfather again. And this conversation is over. Dad stood there for another moment, looking around the room at faces that were looking back at him with disgust and disappointment. Then he turned and walked out of my wedding reception the same way he had walked out of my life, quietly, selfishly, and without looking back. As the door closed behind him, the room erupted in supportive applause. My grandfather came over and put his arm around me. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Free," I said. For the first time in my life, completely free. James pulled me onto the dance floor, and the party resumed. But something fundamental had shifted. I had publicly chosen my real family over my biological one, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. The rest of our wedding reception was pure magic. Without the weight of Dad's disapproval hanging over everything, I felt lighter than air, free to enjoy my own party without worrying about managing anyone else's feelings. People came up to me all evening to tell me how impressed they were with my strength and grace, how beautiful it was to see me choose myself, how proud they were to witness my grandfather step into the role he'd always filled. "That was the most powerful thing I've ever seen," my college roommate told me. "You just showed everyone what self-respect looks like." As the evening wound down, James and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon in Italy. My grandfather pulled me aside for one final conversation. "Sarah, I want you to know that today was one of the proudest days of my life. Because I got married, because you finally chose yourself, because you stopped accepting less than you deserve, because you showed everyone in that room what dignity looks like. I learned it from you." "No, sweetheart. You learned it from your own strength. I just gave you a safe place to find it." We left for Italy the next morning, planning 2 weeks of complete disconnection from the world. No phones, no social media, no contact with home unless there was an emergency. It was exactly what we needed. For 10 days, we explored Tuscany and Rome without a care in the world. We ate incredible food, saw breathtaking art, and made love in a villa overlooking the Mediterranean. It was perfect. Until day 11, when James insisted we check our messages. "Just to make sure everything's okay with your grandfather," he said. I had 38 missed calls, 27 from Dad, 11 from Melissa, and a voicemail box that was completely full. "What the hell?" I said, staring at my phone. I called my grandfather immediately. "Grandpa, are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. Are you having a wonderful time?" "Yes, but what's going on? Dad and Melissa have been calling me non-stop." My grandfather chuckled. "Oh, that. Well, your father's been having a difficult week." "What kind of difficult?" "The kind that happens when your choices have consequences." He told me the story of what had happened after we left. Dad had been getting calls all week from family members who had heard about the wedding. People were asking pointed questions about why he'd missed walking his daughter down the aisle. His golf buddies had heard the story. His work colleagues had heard the story. His neighbors had heard the story. And none of them were impressed. "People are looking at him differently," my grandfather explained. "They're seeing him for what he really is. A man who abandoned his daughter on her wedding day for a birthday party." "Good. It gets better." Melissa's friends have been asking her why she was okay with her father missing her sister's wedding. Some of them think what she did was manipulative and cruel. Also good. She's been trying to reach you to apologize, to make it all go away so she can stop facing consequences. Well, she's going to have to face them a little longer. "Your father wants to fix things. He keeps calling me asking how to make this right." "What did you tell him?" "I told him that some choices can't be undone, some relationships can't be repaired, and some consequences are permanent." "Perfect. Sarah, I want you to know that everyone who loves you is proud of how you handled this. You showed incredible strength and dignity." "Thank you, Grandpa. Now go back to your honeymoon. Turn off your phone. Enjoy your new husband. Let them sit with their choices for a while longer." I hung up and looked at James. "What do you want to do about all those missed calls?" he asked. I looked at my phone, at the evidence of Dad and Melissa's desperation to control the narrative and make me manage their feelings about the consequences of their actions. Then I turned my phone off. "Nothing," I said. "I want to do absolutely nothing." "Are you sure?" "James, for 26 years, I've been managing their emotions, making excuses for their behavior, trying to smooth over the problems they created. And now I'm done. They made their choices. They can live with the results, without me running to fix it for them." We spent our last 3 days in Italy in blissful silence. No phone calls, no family drama, no attempts to manage other people's feelings about their own bad decisions. Just two people in love, building a life together based on mutual respect and genuine care. It was the most peaceful 3 days of my adult life. We returned from our honeymoon to find our mailbox stuffed with letters. 12 from Dad, 3 from Melissa, 1 from Carol, I gathered them all up and threw them in the garbage without opening a single one. Don't you want to know what they say? James asked. I know what they say. They say it's my fault that their choices have consequences. They say I'm being unfair and cruel. They say family should forgive family no matter what. And I don't care anymore. Their opinion of my boundaries doesn't change my boundaries. But they weren't going to give up easily. When I didn't respond to the letters, Dad escalated. He started showing up places. First at my workplace, then at the grocery store, then at the coffee shop where I met clients. Always with the same desperate energy. Always asking for just 5 minutes to explain. Always getting the same answer. No. After the third ambush, I called my grandfather. He's not respecting my boundaries, I told him. What do you want to do about it? I want him to stop. Permanently. I can have a conversation with him. What kind of conversation? The kind where I explain that harassment is illegal and that continuing to bother you could result in a restraining order. You'd do that? Sarah, I've been protecting you from your father's bad decisions for 18 years. I'm not going to stop now. My grandfather's conversation with Dad was apparently very effective. The surprise visits stopped immediately. But 2 weeks later, Melissa tried a different approach. She called my workplace directly. This is Melissa Mitchell, she told my assistant. I'm Sarah's sister and I need to speak with her about a family emergency. My assistant, bless her heart, came to ask me about it. There's no family emergency, I told her, and if she calls again, tell her I'm unavailable. But Melissa was persistent. She tried calling James at his work. She tried contacting my college friends on social media. She even tried reaching out to my mother. Each time she got the same message. Sarah doesn't want to talk to you. Finally, she wrote me an email. Sarah, I know you're angry, but we need to talk. What happened at your wedding is affecting my entire life. People are treating me like I'm a terrible person. I need you to help me fix this. I read the email and felt nothing but amazement at her audacity. She wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was sorry that it had backfired. She wasn't apologizing for hurting me. She was asking me to help her manage the consequences of hurting me. I deleted the email without responding. 3 months after our wedding, the calls and letters finally stopped. Dad and Melissa had apparently accepted that I meant what I said about cutting contact. For the first time in my adult life, I was living without their drama. And it was incredible. James and I settled into married life beautifully. We had quiet dinners together. We took weekend trips. We made plans for the future. All without having to manage anyone else's emotions or make excuses for anyone else's behavior. 6 months after our wedding, we found out I was pregnant. The news filled me with joy and excitement. James cried when I told him. My grandfather started planning to teach his great-grandchild everything he'd taught me. We were going to create the kind of family I'd always wanted, based on love and respect and genuine care. But as my pregnancy progressed, I found myself thinking about the family members who wouldn't be part of this experience. Dad and Melissa didn't even know I was pregnant. And I realized that I was completely okay with that, because my child deserved to grow up surrounded by people who would choose them consistently, people who would show up when it mattered, people who understood that love is a verb, not just a feeling. If that meant my child grew up without knowing some of their biological relatives, so be it. Because being loved by the right people is infinitely better than being tolerated by the wrong ones. When our daughter Emma was born, she entered a world filled with people who had already proven their love through actions. My grandfather, now 79, held her with tears streaming down his face. She's perfect, Sarah. Absolutely perfect. James's parents flew in immediately to meet their first grandchild. My mother, who had remarried a wonderful man who treated her like a queen, brought homemade baby clothes and endless patience. Emma was surrounded by love from day one, but she was also protected from people who might hurt her the way I'd been hurt. When she was 6 months old, Dad found out about her existence. Uncle Mark told me later that he'd mentioned the baby during a family gathering. Dad had gone pale and asked why no one had told him he was a grandfather. Because Sarah doesn't want you in her life, Uncle Mark had said bluntly. And she certainly doesn't want you in her daughter's life. 2 days later, Dad called me. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Sarah, I heard about the baby. Okay, I'm a grandfather. You're nothing to this child. Silence. Sarah, please. I know I made mistakes, but this is my granddaughter. This is my daughter, and I get to decide who is part of her life. Don't you think she deserves to know her grandfather? She knows her grandfather. He reads to her every day and changes her diapers and sings her to sleep. But I'm her biological grandfather. Biology doesn't create family. Behavior does. Sarah, I'm begging you. Give me a chance to be in her life. Why? Because she's innocent. Because whatever happened between us shouldn't affect her. You're right, she is innocent. which is exactly why I'm protecting her from people who might hurt her. I would never hurt her. You said you'd never hurt me either. But you missed my wedding for a birthday party. That was different. It was exactly the same. It was you choosing someone else over me when it mattered most. Sarah, please. I'll do anything. I thought about his words carefully. Anything? Yes. Go to therapy. Real therapy, not just a few sessions to check a box. Work on understanding why you've spent my entire life putting me second. Learn how to be different. And if I do that, if you prove through sustained action that you've actually changed, maybe we can talk about supervised visits when Emma is older. How much older? Old enough to tell me if something makes her uncomfortable. Old enough to understand relationships. Old enough to protect herself if you revert to your old patterns. That could be years. It could be never. It depends entirely on whether you're willing to do the work. I'll do it. I'll do whatever it takes. We'll see. 6 months later, Dad sent me a letter with proof that he'd started therapy. He included his therapist's contact information and a commitment to working on himself for as long as it took. It was the first time he'd ever taken responsibility without making excuses or asking for immediate forgiveness. A year later, he was still in therapy. 2 years later, he was still consistently working on himself. When Emma turned 3, I allowed him to meet her. The visit was supervised, limited, and came with strict rules. But it was a start. Dad was gentle with Emma, patient, careful not to overwhelm her or compete for her attention. Most importantly, he was consistent. Every other Sunday for 6 months, he came for supervised visits. He never missed one. He never asked for more than I was willing to give. He never made it about his needs or his feelings. Slowly, carefully, he began to earn a small place in Emma's life, not as a replacement for my grandfather, who remained her primary father figure, but as someone who had learned how to love properly. It wasn't the relationship he'd lost with me. That could never be repaired. But it was something new, built on respect and boundaries and proven change. And watching him with Emma taught me something important about forgiveness. Forgiveness doesn't mean going back to the way things were. Sometimes it means accepting that someone can become better while still protecting yourself from who they used to be. What do you think will happen next? Should someone get unlimited chances to prove they've changed? Or are some damages too permanent to repair? Drop your thoughts in the comments because the final chapter shows how this all turned out. 5 years after my wedding day, my life looked nothing like I'd imagined when I was growing up trying to earn my father's love. I had built something infinitely better. James and I had a marriage based on mutual respect and genuine partnership. Emma was growing up confident and secure, surrounded by people who adored her unconditionally. My grandfather, now 83, remained the cornerstone of our family. He taught Emma to play chess and told her stories about the plants in his garden. She called him Papa Joe and looked at him with the same adoration I'd felt my entire life. Dad had earned a small but meaningful place in Emma's world. After 3 years of consistent therapy and supervised visits, he'd proven his commitment to being different. He came for dinner once a month. He never missed Emma's dance recitals or art shows. When she was sick, he called to check on her but didn't push to visit. Most importantly, he never made her feel like she was competing for his attention. But the relationship between Dad and me remained forever changed. We were polite. We were civil. We coexisted peacefully for Emma's sake. But we were never close again. Too much had happened for that. Some damages are permanent, even when forgiveness is possible. As for Melissa, she had completely disappeared from our lives. I heard through family members that she'd moved across the country after her birthday party backfired so spectacularly. Apparently, the social consequences of her actions had been severe enough to make her want a fresh start. She'd never apologized directly. She'd never taken full responsibility for what she'd done. And I was fine with that, because I'd learned that I didn't need apologies from people who weren't genuinely sorry. I didn't need closure from people who weren't capable of giving it. I just needed to build my life around people who valued me. One evening, as I was tucking Emma into bed, she asked me a question that took my breath away. "Mama, why don't I have an Aunt Melissa like some of my friends have aunts?" I sat down on her bed and chose my words carefully. Sometimes, sweetheart, people and families make choices that hurt other people. When that happens, it's okay to decide that you need space from those people. Did she hurt you? She did. A long time ago, before you were born. Are you still sad about it? I thought about her question. Was I still sad about Melissa's betrayal? About my father's years of favoritism? About the family relationships I'd always wanted but never had? No, baby. I'm not sad anymore. Why not? Because I learned something very important. The people who really love you will always choose you. They'll show up when you need them. They'll make you feel safe and valued and important. Like Daddy? Like Daddy. And Papa Joe? And Papa Joe? And Grandpa Bob now? Yes, Grandpa Bob learned how to choose us too. She was satisfied with that answer and drifted off to sleep. Later that night, James and I sat on our back porch, watching the stars and reflecting on how far we'd come. Do you ever regret how everything played out? He asked. Which part? Any of it. The wedding, cutting contact with your dad for so long, missing out on a relationship with Melissa. I thought about it carefully. I regret that I spent 26 years trying to earn love from people who weren't capable of giving it freely. But I don't regret choosing myself. I don't regret setting boundaries. And I don't regret building a life with people who value me. What about the wedding specifically? Do you ever wish your dad had chosen differently that day? No, I said, surprising myself with how quickly the answer came. Because if he had chosen me that day just to avoid consequences, I would have spent the rest of my life wondering if he really meant it. And now I know exactly who he is and what he's capable of. I know that he's working to be better, but I also know that his love comes with limitations. And that knowledge protects me and Emma. You sound like you've made peace with it all. I have. Because I learned that acceptance doesn't mean approval. I accept that my father is who he is, but I don't approve of how he treated me for most of my life. And accepting that reality without approving of it gave me the power to build something better. As we sat there in comfortable silence, I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who would have done anything to make her father choose her, the one who would have accepted crumbs and called it love. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth, who had built a family based on respect and consistency, who had learned that love without respect isn't love at all. A woman who had walked down the aisle with the right man on her arm, even if it took her 26 years to figure out who the right man was. 10 years after my wedding day, I was hosting Emma's 8th birthday party in our backyard. The yard was filled with children laughing and playing, parents chatting over coffee, and the easy warmth of chosen family. My grandfather, now 88, and moving a bit slower but still sharp as ever, was teaching a group of kids magic tricks. Emma was in her element, confident and happy, surrounded by people who adored her. Dad was there too, quietly helping with setup and cleanup. Over the years, he'd earned his place in our lives through consistent action and respect for boundaries. He'd never tried to replace my grandfather as Emma's primary father figure. He'd never pushed for more than I was willing to give. He'd simply shown up, reliably and humbly, for whatever role I allowed him to have. It wasn't the relationship we'd had when I was young, but it was something new, built on mutual respect rather than obligation. As the party wound down and guests started to leave, Emma ran over to me with dirt on her dress and pure joy on her face. "Mama, this was the best birthday ever. I'm so glad." "Sweetheart, you know what I love most about my birthdays?" "What's that?" "Everyone who loves me is here, all in one place, all happy to celebrate me." Her words hit me like a lightning bolt, because that was exactly what I'd always wanted, not just for birthdays, but for life. To be surrounded by people who were genuinely happy to celebrate me, who showed up consistently, who never made me question whether I mattered. That's beautiful, baby. Mama, can I tell you a secret? Of course. Sometimes I feel sorry for kids whose families are mean to them. But then I remember that I'm lucky because my family chose to love me right. Out of the mouths of babes. Later that evening, after Emma was asleep and the house was quiet, I found myself looking through our photo albums. Pictures of our wedding day. My grandfather's proud face as he walked me down the aisle. James's radiant smile as we exchanged vows. The joy and love radiating from everyone who had chosen to be there. Pictures of Emma's birth, surrounded by people who had waited years to meet her. Pictures of family dinners and holidays and ordinary Tuesday nights that had become extraordinary because they were filled with genuine love. Pictures of a life built deliberately, with intention and boundaries and the hard-won wisdom that love should never hurt. I thought about the woman I'd been 10 years ago, desperate for her father's approval, willing to accept scraps of attention and call it love, convinced that blood relation meant more than character and consistency. That woman felt like a stranger now. Because I'd learned the most important lesson of my life. You don't have to accept less than you deserve just because it comes from family. You don't have to stay in relationships that diminish you. You don't have to keep trying to earn love from people who aren't capable of giving it freely. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away and build something better. My phone buzzed with a text message, interrupting my thoughts. It was from a number I didn't recognize. "Sarah, this is Melissa. I know it's been years, but I wanted to reach out. I've been in therapy and I understand now how badly I hurt you. I don't expect forgiveness or a relationship. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry and that I hope you're happy. I stared at the message for a long time. 10 years ago, receiving an apology from Melissa would have felt like vindication, like proof that I'd been right about her behavior all along. Now, it just felt irrelevant. Not because I was bitter or holding grudges, but because I'd built a life that didn't need her validation or her apology to be complete. I typed back a simple response. Thank you for reaching out. I'm glad you're getting help. I wish you well. Then I deleted her number and put my phone away. Because some chapters of your life are meant to stay closed, even when the other person finally learns how to apologize. James found me on the couch looking through photos. Penny, for your thoughts? Just thinking about how far we've come. Any regrets? None, not a single one. Not even about the people who aren't in these pictures? I looked at the photos again. At the faces of people who had earned their place in our lives through love and consistency and respect. Especially not about the people who aren't in these pictures. He sat beside me and pulled me close. I'm proud of you, for building this life, for choosing yourself, for teaching Emma what healthy love looks like. We built this life. Together. Together, he agreed. As we sat there surrounded by the evidence of our beautiful, intentional life, I felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with revenge or proving anyone wrong. It was the satisfaction of knowing that I'd chosen correctly, that I'd walked away from people who couldn't love me properly, and toward people who could, that I'd built a family based on respect rather than obligation, that I'd taught my daughter that she deserves to be chosen, consistently and joyfully, by the people in her life. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own happiness, make sure to like and subscribe. Sometimes the family you build is more important than the family you're born into. Sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the courage to walk away from people who don't choose you back. And sometimes the most beautiful life is the one you create when you finally understand your own worth. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.